The following program is an original production of WICC PBS Chicago.
Tonight, an estimated 2 million adults in Illinois struggle to read. Where does the system fall short, and what does that mean when it comes to productivity, employment, and safety?
Just Google graduation. How one tech giant is searching for a way to spark success in students and lower the dropout rate in Chicago.
And the state's new marijuana possession law. Is it unfair? These stories and more tonight on In the Loop. Good evening, I'm Barbara Pinto.
And I'm Chris Bury. Tonight, a closer look at adult illiteracy in Illinois.
An estimated 1 in 10 Illinois residents struggles to read and write.
That hurts their ability to find decent paying jobs, fill out medical forms, or even register to vote.
Tonight, the story of one Chicago man's late in life journey to literacy and the efforts being made to help others like him.
Only job I could get was in a restaurant, washing dishes, mopping the floor and stuff. That was the only kind of job I could get because I couldn't read and write.
72-year-old Harold Barnes moved from Mississippi to Chicago more than 50 years ago. As a 20-year-old, he struggled to make sense of anything in print, including his utility bills.
Well, I had to go from this relative to that relative, paying them money to help me to read my mail.
At work, he fought to keep a painful secret, figuring out ways to hide the fact he couldn't read.
You try to find an excuse to be absent. Get them you left your glasses at home. I tell them that you can't read without your glasses. Something to kind of throw them off to somebody else.
After his wife, who could read, passed away, he decided to do something and came to Literacy Chicago for help. Harold says learning how to read moved him from darkness to light and drastically changed his life.
It looked like everything started opening up for me then. Before then, it looked like everything was shut down on me.
After you finally got yourself off the couch and you got yourself to the doctor brings out that big old wooden stick and says, open up and say, ah.
One of Harold's teachers was Rob Schindler, an attorney and longtime volunteer at Literacy Chicago.
He's like a brother to me. He's like a brother to me.
I found my passion. And it came after I was 40, but I found my passion and I know what I want to do for the next chapter of my life.
Schindler uses some unconventional methods in the classroom, like having his students read lyrics and sing out loud.
Ooh, what you want, hey, I got it. Ooh, what you need, you know I got it. All I got to do is go in the space.
If an adult can't read and the adult's the parent, they're not helping their children. So there's this cycle of low literacy.
Dorothy Miasso is Executive Director of Literacy Volunteers of Illinois. She says nearly 2 million people in Illinois struggle with reading, and that can have dire consequences in the workplace.
The potential hazards of people using chemicals that they don't know how to use. They can't read the forms. We've had cases of certified nursing assistants giving the wrong medication.
Miasso says she's seen an increase in the number of adults seeking help, but there just aren't enough tutors to meet demand. There aren't enough volunteers like Rob Schindler.
There's no expiration date on what I'm doing here. I'm going to do this as long as they'll have me come.
Meanwhile, Harold Barnes, who grew up in a Mississippi sharecropper family and went to work instead of school, hopes to someday inspire others with his own success story.
You can learn if you want to learn, but you have to work hard and try to do the best you can do to learn how to read and write.
Today we're joined by Betsy Rubin, Adult and Family Literacy Specialist for Literacy Works. Betsy, welcome.
Thank you.
When we talk about low literacy, what exactly does that mean?
In a way, it's a difficult question to answer because our literacy standards are always changing. What was literate 100 years ago would be considered very low literacy today. If you want to go to college, you probably need a 12th grade reading level. If you want to enter a job training program, you probably need a 9th grade reading level. And if you want to enter what we call a bridge program, which is a focused vocational program with additional reading and writing support, you might need a 6th grade reading level. Yet there are so many people who read below that, and therefore they struggle. So low literacy can mean different things depending on what your purpose is.
When you look at the way our world has evolved and the evolution of technology and how critical that's become, technology has made life easier in so many realms. How about for people who struggle with reading?
Yes, and I think I would add to what I said before that digital literacy has now become an inherent part of the literacy that we expect today. So on the one hand, technology can be helpful because you can get information via media like video that you would have had to have read before. On the other hand, we're constantly barraged with words coming at us on the screen, on our phones, in the newspaper. Everywhere you turn, there are words coming at you that you have to process.
That's daunting for those of us who do read.
It's true.
When you look at the nature of this problem, how widespread is it in Illinois and here in Chicago?
So it's very widespread. So somewhere between 1.5 to 2 million people in Illinois do not have a high school credential, and that's what the U.S. Department of Education identifies as the target population for adult education. And in Chicago, probably 500,000 people struggle to read because they don't have a high school credential. We do know that many people graduated from high school, especially in the past, not being able to read very well either, so that number could actually be higher.
How does one get through the school system and get into adulthood without picking up such a basic skill?
Well, I think that not everybody gets through the school system, first of all. And I think that's what I'd like to focus on, the large number of people who don't make it through. And you saw people like Mr. Barnes in the video who did not complete school because perhaps they had to work, or there are other people who don't complete school because they have family problems or health issues. Sometimes there are bullying issues, and often there are people who have unaddressed special learning needs. You do see, though, that people often come up with strategies to deal with not being able to read. And Mr. Barnes mentioned you can do all kinds of things. You can be very, very intelligent and mask the fact that you cannot read.
Now, those are the issues you talked about were for native English speakers.
Yes.
I imagine there's a whole different set of issues for people who speak a different language but don't speak English and can't read and write in English.
Absolutely. So when we have a large immigrant population in Illinois, and most of them are in Chicago, and over half of people who identify as not speaking English very well also do not have a high school credential. So if you don't speak English well and you did not complete school in your native country, you kind of have a double whammy.
You mentioned the stories that Mr. Barnes made up to kind of throw off the fact that he couldn't read.
Yes.
How much shame is involved in people deciding not to get help and not wanting to learn to read at an adult age?
The shame is very deep-rooted, and I think you can just think about how we use the word illiterate. In fact, where I work at Literacy Works, we do not use that word. We consider it really to be a derogatory term because it is equated in people's minds with being stupid, and that's absolutely not true. You can be highly intelligent and not be able to read, and yet you are judged by not being able to read. And people are so deeply ashamed that, yes, they may use masking strategies, as Mr. Barnes did. You may also develop an attitude. It's easier to act scornful and to say, well, I don't want to do this, this is stupid, than to admit I can't read.
That said, how big a factor is literacy when it comes to crime, when it comes to poverty, when it comes to people who end up in jail?
Well, I can't give you a precise figure, but I do know that low reading levels are very profound in the criminal justice system, that many, many people in jail cannot read. And then they come out of prison, and what is there for them? If they didn't get adequate education, they don't often have very many choices as to occupation and to earning money.
President Obama has spoken a lot about preschools and the importance of early childhood education. Is that the best place to head off this problem?
I don't think that there's one answer. I think that's a very, very important thing. Preschool education is vitally important. But we cannot forget about the adult and the parent. We know that when children grow up in homes where their parents don't read very well, As adults, they are 10 times more likely not to read very well and to have low educational levels themselves. So we know that it's critical for parents to be able to read very well. We also know there are adults out there who can't work. They can't find jobs where they can put food on the table for their children. That doesn't benefit children. There are many unfilled jobs. In Illinois, for example, there are 30,000 manufacturing jobs that are unfilled because employers cannot find skilled workers to fill them. So yes, we absolutely want to focus on early childhood education, but we need to focus on adult education as well.
Literacy rates, it seems, have gone virtually unchanged over the past decade. Why is that?
Again, I don't know that we can say if that literacy rates have changed or not changed. We can certainly say that people have still struggled to complete high school. And again, there are so many factors. People have to leave early for all the reasons I mentioned before because of personal problems or struggles with learning, or they have to leave because they need to go to school. Excuse me, because they need to work. But literacy, again, what is expected today in terms of literacy is ever increasing, so it's harder and harder to achieve that standard.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Betsy Rubin, we thank you for joining us.